Hi, I'm Stephen Lester, and I'll be talking to you today about how to take better photographs. I've been doing photography for over 10 years now. I've had some of my work published in AJC as well as books. I'd like to share some of my knowledge I've learned over the years with you in hopes that you become a better photographer. First, I'd like to show you some bad examples of some pictures. Now, when you're looking at these photos, I'd like you to ask yourself, what do you see that could have been done to make these photos better? Now let's look at some techniques. Composition is a rule of many different things. Most important, I think, is the rule of thirds. This is a very well-known rule, and as explained by Bob Martin in the Ultimate Field Guide to Photography, the rule of thirds has been used in all kinds of art, and photography is no exception. The rule of thirds pretty simply cut your viewfinder up into a grid pattern. 1, 2, 3 rows, vertically and horizontally. You want to line your picture up on these 4 dots, or you can just do 1/3 or 2/3 of your image to split it between a contrast in your image as if like landscape and sky. Another rule for composition is lines. Leading lines help draw the viewer into your photograph. So if you see lines that are piquing your interest, take photos of those. Those are interesting photos. Now, framing of your photos, you can frame it with an object, so like you have like a sculpture and you're just shooting through the sculpture at something. That's a good way to frame something. But also, when you frame your subject inside the frame, you want to try and apply some of the other rules of composition, like the rule of thirds. Here it's not with a third, it's more half, so it doesn't really look very nice. And the item that we're photographing is a bird, and it's straight in the middle of the picture. Now, if we zoomed in a little bit and offset the bird a little bit to the lower left corner, that's a bit more visually appealing image of the bird. And it's more interesting because you actually see the bird's feather, and it's a lot more interesting than a grass yard. And don't be afraid to experiment when you're taking photographs, getting down at different angles. You may even have to lay down on the floor to take a cool photo of something that's real down low. Don't worry about what people are thinking about you, because they're not taking good photos. You are. Now that we've covered some of the composition techniques, let's look at the technical side of photography to see where this can help you as well. Now, most cameras, they're going to have automatic mode, and you've probably never ventured out of that. So if you step out of automatic mode, this is the program mode. That's what the big P is on your camera. Now that's almost like automatic, except for you can actually change a little bit of the settings. It's like putting a little salt on the picture. So let's go over some of the settings so we can see what exactly we would change. Aperture priority is a mode where you are just changing the aperture, and the camera will figure out the rest on the shutter speed. Now aperture plays a big role in understanding light for your photographs. A good example to understand aperture is from this diagram from Digital Photography Simplified. Aperture is actually this little ring inside the lens that allows a certain amount of light in. A big aperture is 22, and it has a small amount of light. So when most people say a large aperture, they actually mean a small number, because a large aperture lets a lot of light in. And this is actually directly related to the depth of field. And depth of field is important because that's how much of your image is in focus. So if it's a shallow depth of field, you only have a small amount of focus. If you have a large depth of field, you have a lot in focus. And this is it's better to be explained through photographs. So here we have an image of a picture of a plant up close, and it's in focus, and it's using f1.8. So it's letting a lot of light in, but at the same time, it's taking the background and blurring it because it's out of focus. It's got a shallow depth of field. And if you bump it up to f11, you notice the background comes in focus more. f16, f22, everything's in focus. And that may be what you want, but in this scenario, just having the background blurred allows you to focus more on the plant and makes for a more interesting photograph. Shutter priority is the other side where you control the shutter and the camera controls the aperture. And shutter can lead to interesting photographs. For instance, if you have a long shutter, you can capture light flowing through the picture during the length of the shutter being open. You can also do the complete opposite and capture just a fraction of time, as in seen in here where this water being dumped on the void looks like a hat. That's something that's probably done at like 4,000th of a second. Something you can't see with your normal human eye. And manual mode is when you're ready to venture out and control all the settings of the camera. The only thing that the camera's going to help you out with is a light meter. It's going to be any viewfinder just telling you if there's too much light or not enough. There's also bulb mode in this mode, and bulb mode is for taking pictures of something that you need longer than 30 seconds of a shutter, like taking pictures of stars. So, I've covered framing, and I've covered the technical parts of taking photographs. But how do you get better? Well, you have to critique yourself. But you may not be sure how to do that. So, let me explain some of the basics of critiquing, and I'll also show you how you can get help from other people by critiquing your photographs. So here's a photo. It's a pretty good photo to begin with. It looks really nice. You can look at how it's interpreted. It's interpreted as kind of like a little creepy dark photo going on here. Technically, the composition is good. It's kind of got the rule of thirds. Its hand here is more focused on his face. And in street photography, it's more about the people for me. So I want his face to be in focus a little bit more. And there's some stuff going on in the background, so there's some improvement points. And here I've kind of beefed up the contrast, so it brings more of his shirt into play. It actually blew up kind of the background more, less distracting, got rid of the little light going on there. And I've cropped it a little bit, so it's closer to, it was actually off from the rule of thirds, just a hair. I think that's a better photo. But photos are subjective, and that's why critiquing will help get you an idea of what other people are looking at when they're viewing your photos. And to do that, you can actually go on to a photo website like Flickr, which is a great place to get your photos critiqued from amateurs all the way up to professionals. Now on the website, flickr.com. There's an excellent how-to from the website, makeuseof.com, that covers critiquing on Flickr and how to get started. And I have listed here some of the groups on Flickr that may be of interest. Now, I hope that you go home and take better photographs from what you've learned here today, and I thank you for coming.